Thank you, Carolina. Hi. So, excuse my voice. I had a little cold yesterday. So I'm Bruno, and I work as a technical educator at the Web3 Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation in Zug, Switzerland. Our mission is to launch decentralized internet protocols and help move Web2 in the direction of Web3. So we want to decentralize the current walled gardens that are kind of preventing the sharing of data outside of their capsules that they've been created in and where they are really being sold from. And in fact, to actually explain what Web 3.0 is, we have to briefly mention Web 1 and Web 2. So Web 1 was the good old classic web where you would essentially read static websites. If you wanted to put up a website, you would write some HTML, you would put it online. People would have to find it usually through other people's websites who would link to it. There was no dynamic search engine. Everything was much more manual. Everything was much more crude. But since everything was so read-only, so only the owners of the websites could post information, you could argue that things were much healthier back then. You didn't really have the hostile environment of the internet that you have today. It was more like an information repository rather than an argument war ground, So then came Web 2.0, which was the read-write web, where people could write things into websites and other people could read them. And this included videos, images, forum posts, whatnot. So this was the dynamic web. You could websites became more dynamic. JavaScript took over the web. We had proper web applications, not just websites. And these applications grew and grew in functionality until we got our behemoths of life improvement that we have today and that we simply do not want to leave behind. These behemoths make life insanely practical, right? You have your Ubers, you have your Airbnbs. I mean, who would have thought that 15 years ago, you couldn't really sell the idea of a website that lets you rent your house to a complete stranger without ever meeting them and getting money for it. That's insane. And yet here we are in 2020 and it's perfectly normal within the limits of COVID, of course. So it changed our landscape, right? We have these various PayPals that let us send money everywhere in the world. We have our Ubers, we have our Airbnbs, we have our Instagrams that let us stalk our crushes, and we have our Facebooks that let us get in touch with grandparents or people who are not very technologically savvy from high school. You have Twitter to argue with strangers. You have all of these decentralized, all of these big centralized applications that help you connect different corners of the world in different ways. But that's the problem with Web 2. It's also very centralized. We have these walled gardens where you have the database of one application that doesn't necessarily need to trust the database of another. So what's true in, I don't know, your Twitter world doesn't have to match the truth in your Facebook world. So these two spaces don't have the means to communicate and to share truth. And because of that, you have this, not only this information mismanagement, but you also have this, this walled garden approach where the application that forced you to build your data in one place actually repackages it and sells it to other providers, other customers, and even yourself back in the form of ads. And what's more, these platforms have no intention to actually share this information because they are driven and funded by you staying there. So if you're allowed to share your information with other places, you can leave. And if you leave, you're not looking at their ads. This is also why most of the content you see is designed to make you angry, and you have no effect on how much stuff you're going to see that makes you angry, because anger makes you click more. If you're happy, if you see posts that you agree with, you will not generally interact with them. And so this is the psychology, this is the psyops that these platforms are playing with you in order for you to leave as much of your psyche as possible in their database so they can sell it and use it and make money off of you, which is fine. I mean, we live in a capitalist society. We encourage profit in all corners of life. But we should, for one, be able to opt into it, and two, perhaps even share a part of those profits if it's my data being sold, right? So with this advent of super centralization and many hacks and security leaks that happen in these platforms, I mean, you have all of those Facebook leaks that we don't even care about anymore, how frequent they are. You have those, you have your Tinder leaks, your Uber leaks, you have a lot of different leaks, both privacy and financial data and all sorts of data. If you combine that with the data abuse and the walled garden approach, the Web 2.0 space starts to look problematic. So Web 3 wants to solve that, and we solve that by introducing the Web 3.0 is basically composed of three facets. One is linked data, so that different protocols can understand information no matter where it comes from. That data is understandable to every application. There's distributed data, so that every node in a network, every computer that's using this data can reach the data it needs. And then finally, there's the blockchain, which is why we're all here, which adds truth to that data. So it makes sure that the distributed data is complete and truthful, and so that every node that gets it knows what it needs and what it wants and knows that it is true. And with the blockchain, we get this one truth of the world that is mathematically provable. Everybody can check and make sure that the Web3's state of the truth is true according to everybody else. So you have this one truth that everybody shares, and not that no one can really manipulate, at least on a technical and mathematical level. And so by doing this, you help these various applications share data, because you, with your private key, with your cryptographic key pair, you own your little part of that data, and you own your profile, and you alone have a way to say what happens to that data. Right now, if you want to send a message to a friend in another part of the world through Facebook, you literally have to ask Facebook, hey, Facebook, would you please send a message to my friend through your servers? And that's fine until it works, until it doesn't work, right? So in Web3, you are in control. There is no one to stop a transaction from one place to another place. And a transaction can be money, it can be just a hello message, or it can be content that somebody doesn't want you to see, like the great Chinese firewall, right? So the idea is to decentralize the web in a way that lets every application access every other application's data, and do it freely and without any gatekeepers or centralized custodians that you need to ask for permission on what to do with your data. That's basically the gist of Web3 and what we're trying to do.
Okay, thanks, Bruno. Then if we have the control, we are not the product. Yes, is that, I think. Then here we also have Alfonso de la Rocha. Hi, Alfonso. He is a research engineer at Protocol Labs. Alfonso, what experience do you have with Web3, and how can Web3 help us?
Actually, Bruno already mentioned several of those things, and I completely agree with him. I mean, it's of removing our dependency on centralization and centralized entities. The internet have transformed into a critical infrastructure. So the more resilient this infrastructure is, the better for us. We are able to have other dynamics in the internet, as Bruno mentioned, where we are not the product, we don't have these intrusive ads, and we can be owners in our data. So in the end, what we can is to fully reimagine the internet. There are a lot of things in the internet that are currently broken, as Bruno mentioned, with the data, the ownership of our own data, and the dynamics and the economy of the internet. But also from a technical point of view, we also have I mean, we can fix a lot of things by using Web3. We can have crypto by design, because we don't have to imagine a weird protocol like TLS in order to be able to know that the source of the content is the actual source of the content, because we will have crypto by design. We will have content addressing. This is really, I mean, this is something that I've been obsessed for a while, and is that if you have to send a message to someone that is in your same room or maybe in your same neighborhood, you have to go to the backbone of the internet. As Bruno suggested, ask Facebook if you can send that message, and then come back. This is really inefficient. I mean, we're moving into a state in which all the traffic will be generated from the edge of the network, and we are still, the internet, the architecture of the internet, it's still built in a way where you have to go to the backbone of the internet and back. In Web3, we are building all of these foundations and all of these models to allow us to contact and to people in the edge of the network to discover not where a resource is stored, but the actual resource. So for instance, if a lot of people regularly access Facebook and they download the Facebook app, you have to go to the Facebook data center and download it. But with all of these protocols we're working on, you have a way in which to request to the actual network where, someone, hey, give me the content. And the one that is nearer to you will give you the content. So we will be able to have a more efficient architecture of the internet. And then what for me is more exciting, we will be able to aggregate all the resources of the internet. So we will end up in a scenario in which instead of having to resort to big entities to get resources, we will be able to aggregate all the resources in the internet, the storage, the bandwidth, the networking, the computation, so that if I have spare computation, I would be able to leave it to others to use it for a reward. And the other way around, I would be able to rent those free resources that are aggregated throughout the internet in order to use it. So I feel that there are a lot of things. We still don't know all the things that we can do. We are starting to see the blockchain. We saw how Bitcoin decentralized the financial system and how the DeFi are, we already have a way of lowering the barriers into the financial system. Well, that same dynamics, I think we will see it in a few years in the internet, where we are also lower the barriers for the internet and everyone would be able to become part of the infrastructure of the internet.
Thanks, Alfonso. Our third panelist is the founder of Subsocial Network. Please welcome Alex. Alex, what is the future of social media using blockchain and decentralized protocols? And how has the Web3 evolved? And what does blockchain contribute there?
Hello, guys. I'm Alex, and we're working on a project that is supported by Web3 Foundation, where Bruno works, and we're building an open protocol for decentralized social networking that is based on Substrate blockchain framework and IPFS technology for content. And what is a features of our solution is that it allows anyone to launch something similar to today's most popular social networks that are like Twitter, Reddit, Medium, and even Quora or Stack or Flow. So the basic idea is that among all of these social networks are very common things like there are channels, groups, and then there are posts and comments, polls and votes, and then you can follow some things. And we just decided to create this stuff in a Web3 way. So there is no central authority that owns this content, but the people who run the infrastructure, like blockchain nodes and IPFS nodes. So anyone can join and post their own content. So what was your main question? Can you please
we have a lot of questions here in the chat. The first is, what happens to the Web3 Foundation when we get Web4?
Well,
I don't know, maybe Bruno?
Yeah. I guess we'll have to rename the foundation. No, it's like there's an unwritten goal of the foundation has always been to self-destruct. When you have a foundation, you don't want to be the embodiment of the Shirky principle. And the Shirky principle states that an institution that is the solution to some problem will do its best to keep that problem alive because it needs that problem to stay alive. We don't really want that. The foundation has a budget, and that budget is running out. We want to make the biggest impact, excuse me, before then. And in fact, if you look at some of the blockchains that we've launched, which are right now Kusama and Polkadot, both of those have an on-chain treasury. and the on-chain treasury is constantly being refilled from various mechanisms of the chain. And the treasury is meant to take over funding the ecosystem later on. So even if the foundation stops tomorrow, there is enough funding in place on those chains to keep things like research and development funded for a good while to come. And there are mechanisms on how that treasury is dispersed. I'm not going to go into detail unless people really ask and are interested, but you can learn all about this on wiki.polkadot.network, where we explain all the mechanisms of our blockchains and how we are ensuring that longevity so that we are not actually necessary for these blockchains to survive.
Okay. And we have another question is, what about big companies such as Facebook and Google? They are not based on blockchain. Will they survive? Alfonso or Alex?
I would not worry about these companies. They have so much money, so they can survive for a couple of decades, I guess. At least they burn too much on autonomous vehicles, for example. But blockchain is not a silver bullet. It's just one of the solutions, approaches to solving the decentralization of our current internet. And for example, this IPFS/Filecoin, I mean, IPFS part it doesn't have blockchain, and it's also key component of decentralized product.
So to add to Alex's response, I agree that for me, Web3 is more than just blockchain. I mean, blockchain is just a use case of Web3, but we also have other protocols we're working in order to try to transition from this centralized internet to a decentralized one, where we are building the transport layer. We are building, for instance, all the people working in Web3, they are building ways of having pure randomness. So there's a project really cool that is called DRAND, that is the first randomness beacon, because there are a lot of applications that need randomness, real life need randomness, and we still don't have a way of generating this real randomness. So, I mean, if you want to check the project, it's drand.love, and you will see that there are a lot of things around Web3 that are being developed that will definitely help to develop the next generation of the internet, where we don't rely on these big guys with big pockets like Google, Facebooks, and etc.
Okay, Bruno, you are an educator. How can Web3? No, sorry. How can we start learning, working with it?
So there are many ways to get started. I would suggest going through to our wiki page. So that's Polkadot Network Wiki, polkadot.network, and find the wiki there. That is like as comprehensive a resource as you can hope for. We have, it's a proper book at this point. If you read that, you will be like an intermediate level expertish in Polkadot if you read it in full. And then if you want to get your hands dirty and start building, there are two resources I can recommend. One is substrate.dev. So substrate.dev is a platform which has tutorials for the Substrate framework. And that framework is what Polkadot, the blockchain, and Kusama, the blockchain, are based on. And in fact, it is also the framework that Alex's project Subsocial is based on. So we have a framework that is of like incredibly high quality because it powers all of these different blockchains. And by using this framework, you get all the functionality that we've developed for these blockchains is plug and play modules. You can pull them in, you can exclude them, but you can also develop your own modules and plug them in. And on substrate.dev, you will find tutorials on how to put together your own custom blockchain and how to use this framework. They are all user-friendly, and none of them should take more than an hour to complete. So this is an excellent learning starter. And then on that very same website, you have the recipes category, which is a list of smaller tasks, but very specific to certain problems. So it's like, if you had an idea on how do I do this or that, it's probably already been done in recipes. So you can check that out and check out the tutorials on substrate.dev to get your hands dirty. Now, this is pretty low level stuff. So this is for if you want to build a chain, if you want to build a blockchain. But if you want to build something on top of an existing blockchain, you will have to learn how to plug into it with JavaScript or other tools in other languages. For that, I started a resource center at .leap.com. So dotleap.com. And there you can find tutorials on how to build a custom user interface, like a website that connects to any substrate-based blockchain and talks to it through JavaScript. More tutorials are coming soon. It's pretty new, so there are only like about 10 or so posts there right now. Still, it's going to be much more useful in the coming weeks. So that's how you get started. But in any case, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Personally, I'm at Bruno at web3.foundation. On Twitter, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Riot or Element, how it's called now. I will always be around to help you out and to answer any questions you might have and to direct you to more learning resources if you're interested.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you very much. And we have time for another question. What projects are you aware of that are building Web3 and how do they compare? Alfonso, maybe?
So, I mean, I can talk from our part. In Protocol Labs, for instance, what we're building is all the models because we think that you cannot move from the actual internet to build an alternative internet from scratch. So in the end, what you need is to build the models that would allow us to upgrade the internet. And there are a lot of projects around. I mean, Bruno has talked about blockchain and blockchain specific. We're working also like Leap peer-to-peer, that is the transport layer for decentralized web. We're working on IPLD, that is a way, Bruno mentioned, the linking of data between different systems. And IPLD in the end is a specification to communicate with different DAG structures. And DAG structure is the model, the content model of the decentralized internet and the decentralized world. We have, for instance, what I mentioned, DRAND. There are a lot of, so Web3 is blockchain, but it's way more. So out there's a lot of projects that are building these small models that will allow us to upgrade the internet. Also, there are projects built over these models. Again, where you have, for instance, Substrate Network is an example that uses Substrate, but you will find a decentralized alternative to WhatsApp, decentralized alternative for everything. So within the Web3 ecosystem, we have people working in the protocols and in the substrate for this upgrade of the internet, and also some companies that are already and projects that are already building the use cases, decentralized alternatives to the centralized systems. And I highly recommend checking it out in the Web3 ecosystem.
Okay, and do you know if Google or Facebook is helping or supporting that development of Web3?
Yeah, so I would add that Google and Facebook are interested in what brings their shareholders more money. And for example, Facebook tried with Libra, and the government of US wasn't really happy because having such a huge user base, like 2.5 billion users, active users, as I know, on Facebook, they can do great competition to US dollar. So the government of US was not happy with this. And about Google, I don't know what are they doing on this, but I heard about Twitter. So Twitter CEO, he said that they're considering to create sort of open protocol or maybe alternative to Twitter. But I actually have doubts about this because from the history of Twitter, I know that in the early days they had an open API that gave you a lot of freedom and features, but once community created different applications like for mobile, for the desktop, Twitter acquired or copycat such applications and then limited API access. And now you need to prove a lot of things to get access to Twitter API, for example, and you will not get all the features. So you cannot compete with Twitter main products, like official products. So I heard lots about this. And the reason is that most of the solutions like Google, Facebook, Twitter, they're based on advertisement, and they make like 90% of revenue on advertisement while we're scrolling through their feeds. And on Google, you also can consider Google results like a feed. So you scroll through it and you say advertisement. So if a blockchain will help them to make more money with these models, then yes. If they find another monetization where blockchain will help them, of course they will switch to this.
But to add to this, I think that they have already seen the value of technically of many of the things that are being developed, because for instance, having a content addressable network, you have a CDN by design, and already companies like Netflix have seen that in their deployments, their cloud deployments, they found content addressable network to be really useful in order to load all the exchange of the images in their cloud infrastructure so that they can have it in a fast way in the region that they're needed. So I don't know, of course, from a use case point of view, they will focus on the thing that makes them money, but also technically they have seen the value to this in some aspects and some dimensions, or at least that's my point of view.
Okay, thanks Alfonso, thanks all. I think that's an exciting protocol. It is exciting theme to talk about that, but it is all for the time. We don't have enough time for the moment. And thank you very much for Bruno, Alex, and Alfonso. Maybe Victoria is back again.
I'm back. So thank you very much, Carolina, for moderating this panel. Well, I know you very well because you are one of the teachers in the master the director of in Spanish. You are teacher of our module in Corda. So I know you are sharp in Spanish, but obviously for you it was a bit tough in English, but thank you so much for doing it. Bruno, thank you so much for joining us again in this session. I don't know, Bruno, both and Alfonso and Alex for joining us this edition. If you want to say a few words before we continue, you are allowed to do that 30 seconds, because we've told the second panel, well, the last panel, that we are a few minutes late, because that's actually true. So Bruno, Alfonso, Alex, if you want to say a few words before we continue, go ahead.
So thank you for having us here. And as Bruno said, contact us for anything that you need, or if you want to have a deep dive into the Web3 ecosystem.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And please don't be afraid to explore Web3. It sounds intimidating and it sounds complicated, but it's actually, once you get into it, much more user-friendly and intuitive when you start thinking about how stuff works. So I welcome you to get in touch. I will drop some of my contact information in Brello in the chat so that everybody can see it. And feel free to hit me up on Twitter or any other medium where you feel comfortable. And I can give you some pointers on where to get started. We also have a bunch of grant programs open, so you can apply to be paid to develop something for the foundation. So if you have a development team and no ideas, but want to learn and want to join the ecosystem, again, there's lots of opportunities. We're looking forward to getting you onboarded and teaching you about decentralized internet. Thanks.
Fantastic. So again, thank you so much, Carolina, Bruno, Alfonso, and Alex. I guess we can continue the conversation in some future editions of the European Blockchain Convention. Once again, thank you so much to the four of you. We will continue now in the next tab. And I hope you will stay with us. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.